Welcome. If you clicked on this video, I imagine that you're either transitioning into the property management leasing career, or you're considering it. Maybe you're in the interview process, or maybe you just got hired. If that's the case, congratulations. Perhaps you're just curious. Either way, whatever brings you to this video, we are going to be chatting about my pros and cons to being a leasing consultant, to being a leasing professional. I am approaching my 2-year anniversary in this field, and I've been in the real estate realm for a total of 4 years. So I have got a pretty good grasp of what the pros and cons are. I'm entering my 3rd year excited. So spoiler alert, I would say it's safe to assume that the pros have outweighed the cons for me, but both are very important to consider. I'm kind of gonna flip-flop pro, con, but we're gonna start with number 1, and this is gonna be both a pro and a con, depending on who you are. But I would say the number 1 con for me, but also pro, whatever you wanna call it, is living on site. Yes, the big elephant in the room, what everybody thinks about when it comes to leasing, living on site, getting that discount. Whew. Guys, for me, honestly, it's a con. I currently live on a site, but I'm in a little bit of a unique situation. I actually started to live in this property before I even worked here. And it's not your typical case of if you live somewhere and the office kind of recruits you, which I have heard of those lucky people. I moved into this property and then I got into leasing or property management, and from there it was just a coincidence that the building that I lived at got taken over by the management company that I was working for about a year at that time. So a little bit unique in that experience, where it's not like I started living here because I got a discount from work, and I had already kind of built a life. Psychologically, it was really difficult for me to separate the two. You never get to fully let go and just be completely not present in your apartment. And for me, that's what makes it the biggest con. It's not even necessarily that people don't respect boundaries and they might ask you questions, even though I have heard things like people getting their doors knocked on, or there has been times where like I'm walking out and it's clear that I'm not working. It's 8 p.m. and someone casually asked me to print something out for them. That is crazy to me, like, get real. Stuff like that would happen, but that's not even really my biggest issue with it. It's more so the psychology of always like representing this place, and you can never kind of be completely lax because you never know who you're gonna run into or what's gonna happen, because you're representing the property at all times. So especially being that I had originally lived at this property and I got to experience what it was like living here without working here, I really did miss that autonomy or that freedom or that separation from work and home. And that is definitely something that I'm going to think twice, 3 times, 4 times that before I consider living on site, even with the discount in question. Now, I can't talk about all of that without getting into the obvious pros. You do get discounts if you live on site. I mean, honestly, it's the least you can do, because it really would not be worth it. No one, I don't think, would ever do it if you didn't get some type of incentive like a discount. Depending on your company, depends what kind of discount you get. Me, again, paying full price for an apartment for over a year that I had already fallen in love with, that I had already decided to live at, and then to get a discount, that was super exciting for me. It really felt like an accomplishment. It really felt like a win. So I don't want to make it seem like it's all horrible. And it really depends on the building. Like, my building is a high-rise, and so it's definitely more community driven, and it's harder to avoid people. Because of that, you're gonna run into people. There's the elevators, there's like smaller hallways, whereas like a mid-rise property is more spread out, or even a garden style property, you don't really have to run into people like that. So everything is really personal experience and preference. But for me, I really think that this might be my last rodeo living on site, just because, again, the never fully feeling like I'm at peace. There's also rules about fraternizing with residents, and so you're not supposed to mingle with them. It just makes it a lot harder to not mix that business with pleasure thing. I did take a little while on that. I felt like I had a lot of information to dive into with that, but let's move on to number 2. All right, so let's move on to the second pro, and that's gonna be you truly get to understand human nature and human psychology. I believe in any customer service field that is going to be a part of it. Through experiencing growth and development and all of that, it's a natural part of being aware and observing how you interact with people, how people act, how people react. Again, especially in customer service or when you're working with people on a daily basis. I took it to a whole nother level when I started to work in leasing. You truly get to see a side of people that you don't see anywhere else. The good, the bad, the ugly, like the crazy. I don't know how to explain it, but it's really opened my eyes. It's not that I'm not as trusting, but I feel like I'm better at reading people. I'm better at calling BS. I'm not as naive. And you just hear a lot of stories and experience a lot of things, people that are clearly unhinged. So it's just really, really interesting. And I'm really into psychology. I'm really into like what makes people tick, why people do what they do, how people can be all in one building and one person really hates their experience and others really love it. It really does show that a lot of what people experience is internal, because you see people show what they have inside, basically based on how they treat you. And of course, again, with any customer service, that's something that you might be exposed to, but property management takes it to the next level. It's just something about being that up close and personal, like in their homes, that just take it to the next level. And again, I've done real estate. I've helped people find their homes, and even in something like that felt like it was a very personal bond, like something as special as like them finding their next home and going from place to place. You do represent the client. It's still not up close and personal and in their business like in property management. All right, let's get into the second con. The second con for me is going to be that your experience is largely impacted by your property and your team. Your property and your team. You can be in the same company and at a different property or with a different team and have a completely different experience. Your team or property can make or break your experience, can either make you hate it or love it. If you have a really cool supportive team, that is a cool team environment. I personally don't strive in the super corporate and strict and like professional and we can't talk about our personal lives and we can't joke and we can't laugh. I was miserable in that environment. I literally was rethinking everything. I was like, did I make the right decision? Do I want to go back to real estate? Like, girl, I can't do that. Like, it was giving really corporate, and I say girl, but guy, girl, whoever you're watching, that's just kind of one of the things that I say. But honestly, if I have a team like that, I cannot thrive. I need a cool team that makes jokes, that's funny, but of course still gets things done, that's supportive, that's not judgmental or assumes. But you can get stuck with a team that really makes you miserable, honestly, whether it's that or you just don't gel, or maybe there's drama or other things. The property is another thing. Hello, it's future me. I should totally be in bed, but I'm editing, like I don't have work tomorrow morning. Anyway, that's besides the point. I did want to clarify and touch on one thing, and it's the why your team is such a big influence to your daily experience in property management, and it's because the teams are much smaller. I don't know about you guys, but all my jobs in the past have been larger teams, like 130 people, 160 people, where there's multiple managers and they're like separated into teams. And so even if you don't like your coworkers, even if you don't like your managers, you don't like have to freaking hang out with them your whole 40 hours, you know? Property management, it's different, okay? So if you hate your manager, you're probably gonna hate your job. If you love your manager, you're probably gonna love your job. Of course, the higher up or the more removed they are from you, they won't directly impact you, but that energy, it does trickle down. And if you're regional, or if your owners, or if your like boss's boss is stressing out your boss is most likely going to be stressing you out. Just be prepared for that and pray for a good team, okay? The property is another thing that can largely impact your experience. If you have a property with difficult residents, there's some residents with some crazy expectations. So if either with the residents, or if the property itself just has a lot of issues and isn't well maintained, that's another thing. If your maintenance team slacks or is understaffed and things break and they don't get fixed, and it's falling on you when residents complain. So be very wise with what property you choose. I would say what company you choose as well, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Make sure that you really vet your property. And if I understand that stuff like your property and your team aren't things that we always have a choice to pick, but also consider if you haven't had the best experiences in the past, it could have been particularly due to your property or your team, and maybe there's a better fit out there for you. All right, we're gonna get into the third pro. I'm not really sure. These number videos, I lose count, who keeps count, who's keeping track. So here's one of my favorite pros, is how lucrative being a leasing consultant is. Like, it truly is, depending on what company you go with. I would say the most lucrative are the ones that pay you hourly rather than salary, the ones that pay you bonuses rather than a flat fee. Not completely dissing the flat fees, some of those can be really lucrative, especially if they're a lease up, which is a brand new property that you're basically leasing up from the ground up. That is a very lucrative opportunity. Super, like one of the most, like easily into the 6 figures. But you can make anywhere from 70K up, I would say, if you have a good base pay and a good bonus structure. The reason I say to avoid salary is because leasing is not really one of those jobs that you can easily come in at 9 and clock out right at 5. Typically it's actually 6 that we get out of office. You typically have extra tasks that you need to do. And so for the sake of, if you ever are staying over, or if you're often staying over, you want to make sure that you're getting paid for all of that and that OT. But with salary, clearly you can't. It's nice to always have like a small check, which is typically your hourly check, that is consistently coming in, something that you can pay your reoccurring bills with, like rent. For my company personally, I get paid one bonus check at the end of the month, and then I get my other checks like bi-weekly. So benefits, they typically have good benefits, again, depending on your company, but it's just a really nice structure and mix of like consistent, stable income, and then opportunity to earn commission. It's a good balance. All right, let's get into the next con. For me, it's gonna have to be how draining it can get. It gets really draining, y'all, and it can be really easy to get burned out if you're spreading yourself thin. Just through expressing yourself and broadcasting the property and having high energy and just talking for hours, by the end of the shift, like sometimes I can be so drained and tired that I don't even have time or feel like I have energy for anything else. But don't let it be a day where your patience is getting tested, where people are pushing your buttons and not being considerate and being rude and being mean and just being nasty. Thankfully, I haven't experienced like anything too crazy, but I've heard horror stories and I've seen horror stories firsthand, and I think it depends on personalities. Like, I don't know what it is, if it's something about my personality, but people don't usually come at me crazy, I'm so grateful for, because that's honestly something that I don't have too much practice with handling. I have definitely been put in uncomfortable situations, or where you really have to think on your toes of what to say, what to think. Anyway, yeah, it can be very, very draining. And if you're approaching like a phase of burnout, it can be really, really tough to get out of it. You might need to shake it up, switch things up. It can also be really easy to burn yourself out if you're overworking yourself, if you're spreading yourself too thin. I'm giving you a pro, I'm giving you a con, I'm giving you a pro, I'm giving you a con, I'm giving you a pro. So for the next pro, I'm gonna say it is the opportunities for growth. Internal growth, you can go from a leasing consultant to assistant property manager. Now, I will admit that this is probably the least lucrative position in the leasing office. Assistant managers really don't make that much in comparison to like the commission opportunity that leasing consultants have, and they kind of have more on their plate, but it can be a very temporary short season, especially if you do what you need to do to just move up and get promoted to the next step, which is property management. And property managers get paid. Like, there are lots of buku money opportunities in property management. 6 figures, like you can be set for life, good benefits. The longer that you stay with these companies, the more that they hook it up. Most companies are pretty easy about having you transfer to a different property, so you can always ask your manager or your regional if you're interested in something that's coming up, or maybe even moving to a whole different area. Most management companies are nationwide. Well, not most, but a lot of them are. And if it comes to a place where you think that you're reaching a bit of stagnation internally within your company, you can always pick from the dozens of other companies that there are. And typically it's pretty easy to move around once you're in the industry. So I would say there are endless opportunities. And this I won't really say is a, oh man, my light went out, y'all. All right, guys, I'm back with the light situation fixed. Let's get back into our pros and cons. They say it's a pro or a con is kind of more of a fact. You absolutely have to be good at multitasking. It's a non-negotiable. Non-negotiable, you have to like be able to start something, finish it, get interrupted, jump here, jump there. You need to be able to prioritize your tasks and get things done in an efficient manner, so that you're not wasting a whole bunch of time after work or before work. Like, you really have to learn how to manage your time well. I will say it's not nearly as overwhelming as managing your time for something like real estate. That was really difficult for me because you have no parameters. Like, you kind of have to push yourself to show up and stick to your schedule. With leasing, it's a 9 to 5, so you have those parameters of that those hours of 9 to 6, but list your stuff and make sure you get it done while still juggling people coming in, tourists coming in, things coming up. Like, anything can happen. So there's that, which leads me into the next. What the freak? We might just have to roll with the lighting, and I'll try to wrap this up. But yeah, sorry guys, it's not working, but I really want to finish this video. I don't want to stop. All right, so which leads me into the next pro, which is you get to experience and exercise so many skills, y'all. I feel like I'm a therapist, an event planner, a content creator, a designer, like a consultant, a lawyer. Whew, I wear so many hats. I used to say that when I was a apartment locator, but it's even more intense, I would say, in property management. We're down to the last couple, guys, so hang in there with me. If you are still here, give this video a thumbs up. I hope that you are gaining gems, or that this is giving you some clarity as to wherever you might be, or whatever reason that you clicked on this video. But let's wrap it up with the last con and the last pro. So last con, I would say, and this kind of goes into how your office team really can impact your experience, but I would say the cattiness, the drama, the like mean girl kind of like high school feel that property management does get the reputation for. I've more so heard to the grapevine and I've kind of experienced firsthand, but it can be very drama, very catty, very gossip in the office. Again, not to scare you, it really, really depends on one, I think your company, and two, like your office environment. I will say that it kind of can be a superficial industry where you have to look good, make sure that you're dressed appropriate and looking nice. It's kind of like an unspoken rule that you need to wear makeup, that you need to have heels on. Some make it an actual rule in their dress code where you have to wear heels. I think that's more of like older ways. I think they're getting a little bit more dated. I should have had like a manager say something to me before, like, oh, why don't you wear makeup anymore? And I was just like, oh shit. And I was going through kind of a tough time at that time, but I was like shocked. I didn't even like to me, that was kind of crazy. But like, as I talked to some of my peers and some of my coworkers, it's like, yeah, that's definitely a thing, especially with people who have been in the industry over 10, 20 years, because I think it used to be very much so prevalent back in the day. Again, I think the industry is like starting to outgrow it, but it definitely still exists. So just keep that in mind. It's very superficial how you look, how you act, how you talk, like what is it giving, you know? Which leads me right into the final pro, which is you meet amazing people. You meet great people, whether it's on your team, but some residents, for all the like kind of wacko ones, you meet some really sweet, cool people. A lot of the time people come down and give you gifts or show you their appreciation, or they just come and talk to you or tell you about their appreciation. You meet some really sweet, nice, cool people, and that's kind of goes into the psychology of like how people work and things. I thought I knew people, but I don't even close to know people. Like there's a lot, and even with me being here for me doing this for 2 years, through stories that I've heard from people that have been doing it for 4, 5, 10, 20 years, I'm sure I haven't even seen the half of it. You really do meet great people, great residents, great teammates, great managers. Damn, this hair just doesn't want to stay down. Like, why are we preying on my downfall right now? Like, can I film this video? Oh Lord. Let's wrap this up before something else crazy happens. We've talked about the pros and we've talked about the cons. You might have a pretty good idea right now based on your personality on whether this might be something that you're leaning towards or not. I know that 2 years ago when I was making this transition and considering coming into the leasing, these were the type of content and videos that I wanted to see. And there were not too many people discussing it. Like there were here and there, of course. So I feel like there's definitely a need for these discussions. If you enjoyed today's video, give me a thumbs up. If you are interested in these topics, definitely subscribe because there are more and more and more of these videos coming from me. Other than that, thank you so much for joining me on this side of YouTube today, and I will see you next time.